projection queries in SQL. So I'm going to create a new query, and the way that we do that, as we know, is to click on Create, and I click on Query Design, and then I'm not worried about the interface here. I'm just going to go into SQL mode. Here it is. So let's just work through some examples then. So for example, let's say I wanted to see all the information in the department table. Well, the way that we do that is we go select star, and then on the second line we use the actual table name that we're actually interested in, which in this instance would be department. So the star means show me all the columns, and on the second line we put the actual table that we're actually interested in, which is department, for example. Then I click on run, and you can see it shows us all the information, all the columns from the department table. So let's go back into SQL mode. Now what we could do, for example, we could, let's see all the information in the employee table. So we could go select star from emp. There it is. Now the star means show us all the columns, but this session is really specifically focusing on projection, and projection gives us particular columns from the table. So for example, we could, if we go back into the SQL mode, rather than using a star, what we could do is on that first line we can list the particular columns that we're interested in. So let's say that we wanted to see department number, for example, and e-name, and who their manager is. Now you notice I can change the order here. So I'm actually projecting columns from the table. So I'm slicing those columns out. And if I run that, you can see we've got the department numbers, the e-names, and the manager of those employees. Now if we go back to the SQL again, we could, for example, ask for Sal instead, and if we run that, you can see that brings up the salary. But of course the great thing about queries is that it enables us to ask sort of what if questions. For example, what would happen if we gave everybody a 10% pay rise? So let's go back into the SQL and do that. And what I can do is I can simply make a single addition, a single alteration to that Sal part up there in the select statement. So for example, I could go multiply Sal by 1.1, and what that will do is that will actually show us an increase of the salary by 10%. So let's run that. There we go. Now I just want to show you something here, because this really is a what if question. What I haven't done is I haven't actually changed the original values in the table, and I can prove that to you just by bringing up the emp table here. So you can see, for example, if you look at March, you can see that what it's done is it's actually added, it's shown us what would happen if we added 10% onto the salary column. We haven't actually changed the data in the original table. Now we can do that in SQL, but we won't cover that until later on. So I'm just going to close the table back down. Now of course, because this is a calculated field, we have a slight issue here. It's very straightforward in the SQL when we are asking just to display a column. In other words, just show me department number or just show me e-name. But of course, when we say show me Sal with an increase of 10%, Access can't use that as a column name because it's got a star in it. So what happens is, and you can see this here, it sort of makes up a sort of semi-random column name. Now that's fine, but it may not be appropriate. One of the ways that we can overcome this is we can actually specify our own name. And the way that we do that, if I go back into the SQL mode, is to use the as reserved keyword in SQL. And here I can literally make up a name. So I could say, for example, pay rise. Now when you make up the names here, no spaces, mustn't begin with a number. I think you could put numbers on the end, but you can use whatever name you like as long as you obey those rules. And if we click on run now, you can see that it's taken my suggested name for that particular column name. So we can do really nice what if calculations across an entire column. And of course, in this example, it's just got sort of 13, 14 rows. But in a real life example, that could be working over 10,000 records or 1,000,000 records very easily. And that's the whole point. One of the distinguishing characteristics of a database is that they've been specifically built to handle hundreds of millions of records. It's not like a spreadsheet. Spreadsheets are great at doing a small, sort of relatively small data sets. When I say small, it could be like 10,000 data items. But you aren't going to start processing millions of records, millions of bits of data in a spreadsheet. And that's where databases come into play. So let's go back to, let's have a look at our EMP table again. Now you can see that obviously this is people that we employ, and you can see they've got particular jobs. So let's imagine that we had a query that said something like, show me all the jobs. So let's go back into the RSQL. We might start off just by something like this. We might go, well, that's easy. Let's just go, show me all the jobs. Select job from EMP. And if I run that, you can see that it has actually, as we would expect, it's shown us all the jobs. Now, this is one of the differences between a database product and the relational model, because of course, there really aren't such things as duplicates in the mathematical model, which is derived from relations and set theory. But here, inside our database product, it's a sort of implementation of that-ish. So it is actually showing us all the values that we have. If you want to see the unique values, in other words, if you want the SQL to behave as if it was like the relational model, as if it was a set, then we actually have to add in an extra reserve word. And that reserve word is the word distinct. So if I go back into the SQL mode, what I can do is I can say, show me the distinct, in other words, show me the unique jobs. And if I click that now, you can see we just get the 5 particular jobs. Now let's go back into SQL mode. So let's bring up everything from EMP again. Select star from EMP. Now one of the things that we can do is for the fields that are strings, and in fact we can actually also, if we mix them with the fields, with the columns that are numbers, we can actually start to combine columns together using this thing that's called concatenation. And you've probably done concatenation if you've done any Excel work. Now, because this is a Microsoft product, it uses the same terminology, the same notation as you would see in Excel. So for example, let's say that we wanted to see employee numbers and names as a single field. Well, we could go back in here. And the way that we do that is to use the ampersand character. So we could start off with something like this. We could go emp number and ename, and we could go as combined. Like that. Now if I run that, what the ampersand character will do is it will combine emp number and ename into a single column. That's called concatenation. And you'll have seen this in Excel perhaps. So if I run that now, you can see what it's done is it's combined those 2 bits of information into a single column. We could play around with it a bit. For example, if we wanted to insert a space between them, we could actually put a single space character in like that. So what I've done there is I've used a double quotes to create a literal string. A literal string here, I'm actually directly typing that into that space. I've just pressed the space bar between the 2 quotes. So the way that I read this is I'm going to take emp number, I'm going to combine it with a single space, and then I'm going to combine it with ename. So we run that this time. There we go. You can see I've got the emp number and the ename in a single column. And the reason that this is the kind of thing is useful is, for example, you could imagine that you were writing a form letter and you actually wanted to sort of construct the form letter here in some way before you dump it into Word. You could have something like this. We could say, for example, earns, we could attach sal on the end, something like that. I'll just space this out so you can read it. Let's run that. I'm going to double click here because it's just not quite wide enough to display it. There we go. So that's quite nice because it enables you to actually create messages and words, sentences that you could, for example, use in a mail merge and dump them into Word.